Alright, so we had a perfectly fine comic, followed by a perfectly fine video game. So, tell us, Tio, are we about to head back to the levels of greatness, just another perfectly fine, or down below?
Uh, like, I can imagine this originally was supposed to be something very fun, and the end result is still fun to play, I will say that. But this is the game that got screwed over the most by development because people data mined a couple of things and found out a lot of cut content, including at least two major levels, one playable character, Tolwyn, again.
Damn,
And as we
again.
will see, the story is very short. How short? This run is only 3 parts.
Okay, so this sounds like Twinsanity, but possibly even more stuff was cut than
I
that.
will have time
If you're familiar with
to.
Twinsanity, you'll know how insane that is.
I will have time to mention this because outside of the major cutscenes at the beginning or at the end of the levels, there's not much in terms of dialogue in the game. Yes, you can also play as co-op as either Ratchet, Clank, or Quark. So after the events of All for One, now we're on the Starship Phoenix. And as we'll see soon, Quark has lost the elections off screen.
So, all that development that we put a whole comic into was done after just one game.
To be fair, it is ideally, peak Quark not maintaining a position such as, president for long.
Released from public service, former President Quark decided to retake the mantle of righteousness, to serve as the people's perennial protector, to defend the galaxy with the vigor of a true hero. And the galaxy? Well, the galaxy has never been so boring.
This is just sad. He lost the election like 3 months ago. Don't you think it's time for an intervention?
I believe Captain Quark is having a difficult time adjusting to life in the private sector.
Computer, find me something to shoot!
Sorry, dude, we got not on the radar.
Also, the Starship Phoenix is a new AI. I forgot who the voice actor is. It's just for this game alone.
We are once again forgetting that Ratchet ship, had sentience at some point.
It's in this game. You use it for transport, but doesn't talk. Aphelion has stopped being a character a long time ago, Joe. I don't know what to tell you. Also, Clank continues to have weird proportions, and it's even worse if you actually get to play as him. But the good news is that now we're properly having a control scheme and camera similar to the traditional games, and Ratchet's hover boots, as you can see, controls pretty much just like in A Crack in Time. Oh, look, also the Plunder is here on the ship again. This game in America is actually called Full Frontal Assault. While instead in Europe, because of marketing, it was called instead Q-Force. We will get an explanation why is it called Q-Force in just a second, because the following cutscene kinda sorta establishes what was going on. Dribs, what was instead the title in Japan?
It's called Ratchet and Clank Galaxy Sentai Q-Force.
I mean, I guess. That's the most
I can... Power Rangers here?
There is a villain in Power Armor, we'll say that.
I guess if I can start off with some positive, the rendering and color balance actually does look pretty cool.
It's very green, yes. Anyway, with the excuse of actually killing the robots in the back of a Starship Phoenix 2, you have an excuse to actually come back now to the front, because you're about to receive a call. Here is that basically you receive a couple of bonuses that are only mattering for the multiplayer, so ignore that. Again, this game loves to actually have, multiplayer bonuses, mostly because it was made not necessarily with the single player tacked on, but was trying to be balancing. I will explain more in a second because, again, this game is more focused about gameplay rather than the story in itself. It plays it, very separately. So let's go back to the front of the ship and see who the mysterious caller is.
Greetings,
I'm not gonna say who the voice actor of this villain is, mostly because we learned that at the end of the part. One nature of this being Rush is that we get to learn plot points very quick.
Money and power. Who cares what he wants? Shoot something.
Jesus.
You know, as weird as it is, it feels like I needed more of a comic to come in between this and the last game than, well, Alpha 1 and Crack in Time.
So, here's the setting. This villain has managed to deactivate a bunch of the security system, and conveniently also potentially alerted a bunch of, marauders to invade them.
Was it me?
No.
It was me, you dolt! Only you and your team are permitted to each location. If I even
That's not
smell it,
suspicious
you
at
will
all.
alert the fence trooper.
It's more like of a restricted case and an excuse to not have characters like Sasha involved. It's still, bad form of not including them, but at least the plot is a justification for it.
You know what this calls
Someone who
for?
doesn't like Captain
Don't say
Quark.
it.
I'll
Someone
tell
who
you what this
failed.
calls
Do you have the
for.
slightest idea how little that narrows it
There you
down?
go. Hey, that's the title of a game in Europe.
Wait a minute, sorry. Hold on,
I
sorry.
seem to remember that the Q-Force War in the third game was comprised of a bunch of more people, like Helga, Skid Mad Max, Scrunch, and yet only these three people are the ones on the ship, plus the plumber, if you will notice. I'm gonna talk to him another time.
I'm guessing
There you go,
that's
that's how Clank looks like on the field. He bulks up.
Wait, so this game they actually took my advice of having Clank bulk up a bit?
He's not giant, but anyway, just to mention, here on the Corgo refinery, the game itself is actually going to explain very succinctly about what you're supposed to do. For this first part, I will showcase in its entirety, roughly, what you're supposed to do. For the next couple of levels, I'm going to give you a best of, because, like I said, a lot of the gameplay in this does not provide a lot of story context or, immense variety. There you go. This is an hybrid between the standard Ratchet and Clank gameplay and a tower defense. You have your base with generators, and a bunch of enemies occasionally will try to invade it. Not scatteredly, there is a regularity in how they do that. There you go. And you're supposed to defend. So, in between sessions of being invaded, you will have to explore around the level and do what Ratchet and Clank tends to do best, blow shit up, basically. And you use the bolts that you collect to actually not purchase weapons, but instead purchase defense for your ships, like repairing damaged objects or purchasing turrets, for example. How do you get weapons instead? You will see soon enough. You need to get 2 weapon dispensers, which borrow the Q-Force emblem on it, and you solve a minigame to actually acquire one that you add permanently to the arsenal of that you have currently. Like in this case, you need to go to one of these boiling pots. Basically, that's what these are.
Oh, by the way,
Solve these.
Theo, you were asking earlier who voiced the ship's AI.
Yeah.
It's Mikey Kelly, aka Ratchet's voice from the first game.
Huh.
That's a nice reference, I guess. So, what year
Being
did this
demoted
game
from
come
main
out?
character to ship's AI.
2012.
10 years after the fact.
2012
Wait a
drove a
minute.
10th anniversary of a franchise. Probably that's the reason why.
Ah, yes, now I remember, yes. Okay, if people were tepid on All for One, I recall there was a lot of backlash to this game, partly because, 10th anniversary and people were expecting something better, and oh boy, if we talked about how much All for One was a departure from the gameplay you're used to Ratchet and Clank on. Tower defense. Now mind you, that is not inherently a bad thing, but typically when you're adding tower defense into a series, that's like for something that's maybe a mini-game or something, or side stuff, not like the main meat and potatoes of what really did start off as basically a shooter platformer hybrid.
Mind you, Jova, I argue the tower defense is applicable only for the level structure rather than the actual entire gameplay. You're still supposed to actually go around on platform and blow shit up the same way. It's just that instead of a linear progression, you're just in a gigantic area and you solve objectives in a different way. It's basically kind of a hybrid between a MOBA and what's it called? Man vs. Machine from Team Fortress 2.
The thing is, though, as you can imagine, fans didn't really care
well,
for this
the
playstyle.
major problem instead is that you're still selling this, okay, it was a reduced price, because it was considered a budgeted title, but it was still supposed to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the franchise, and it was massively cut to reach the deadline. Like I said, at least 2 levels cut, 1 playable character, Tolwyn, and guess what, if this sounds familiar for something like this in time, Sony wanted to push this title to have also a compatible and having the same content version for the PS Vita, which in turn did not work very well.
I'll admit, for a moment, I thought you were going to say they also forced them to, of course, use the 6-axis.
No.
But thankfully not.
But my point being that a lot of development time was actually to be given to a version that was not even working properly because Sony had no idea what to do with the PS Vita around this time.
So we're not to the point where we can say Insomniac didn't care, but holy cow, it feels like Sony just didn't care. They thought, oh, it's Insomniac. They can work their magic and create gold.
I would like to remind you, this is the same time period where Sony itself, you know, was sending PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale to die and had no idea what to do, despite the development studio clearly having a vision behind it. So,
you know, I talked about how good the rendering was, but whatever that backdrop is when Ratchet does that hovering maneuver looks so bright. With
some
some
textures might be glitched out of the emulator, mind you. I have a physical copy of this, but I haven't tried like I did for All for One. So I cannot tell you 100% of what is game intended and what is actually glitching. So
More enemies are headed to the base.
So yeah, that's basically it. Again, as you can see, it also takes the excuse to have a bunch of weapons from the rest of the Future Trilogy, like the Warmonger for your rocket launcher, for example. You might have noticed from the silhouette that there was also one of the weapons from A Crack in Time, so we'll get also that. So again, at its base, the gameplay is still fine. It's just that instead of moving from point A to B, you know, to solve each world's problems in a linear fashion, you're basically in this specifically bigger area with smaller areas with objectives to resolve, and occasionally your main hub will be attacked and you need to defend it. But otherwise, it's pretty much still Ratchet and Clank, you know, run around, jump on platform, blow shit up. Also,
again, the main
collectible stuff, you know, like the golden balls. Didn't bother to collect all of them because, again, the rewards for these are very multiplayer focused. So it's pretty much clear that Sony wanted to have, you know, a title that could sell on the PS Vita and also try to market the multiplayer-based, you know, potential of the console. But my God, like that is basically a recipe for disaster. Having very specifics, develop on a console which the team had no familiarity on, having to do it on a deadline to reach the anniversary of a franchise, like this is
genius.
That's literally hostile corporate environment.
Like, I mean, sadly, this sort of stuff was not as much at the forefront as it is now. I really do get the feeling that Sony were draining it dry, partially also because, as we know, the PS3 had a few issues with having consistent IPs that would sell. Like, I know, some may be thinking, but SCWRM, what about Last of Us? Yeah, reminder, Last of Us wouldn't be, like, till near the tail end.
1 year after
PS3
this game,
slice
2013.
essentially.
Yeah.
So, as far as I recall, Ratchet and Clank was kind of holding the fort when it came to long-running IPs.
Well, there was also, as much as I don't like that, there was also Uncharted, so...
I was gonna say, aside from the shooters, to be fair, but yeah.
Force base is
I was
secure.
going to say a couple of things I should mention. Did you mention that the Vita version had a delay?
Yes, because they tried to their damnness to make that thing work. In the end, it still really didn't. But you know, it had to be delayed at the same time.
And it didn't even come out here in Europe.
Maybe it's time to
No, because the Vita here in Europe was not selling at all. Like,
I had one.
I got it too because I wanted to play Tales of Arts, which, you know, I had fun for what it was worth, so there is that. So I got the Vita for just one game, which probably will get a port anyway, so it's just sitting there.
Right. You know, okay. Like with many things, maybe in a vacuum this could be enjoyed, but like many games in the series, it has the fact that, well, for one thing, it's a part of a long-running series to contend with, but okay, so it's your big 10th anniversary, and what you crap out is essentially a glorified digital download of a game, essentially, which, I mean, isn't even really that great. I mean, I'm not gonna act like it's terrible or anything, but critics, both official and fan-wise, were not particularly the kindest to this one. Let's see, Game Informer admittedly gave it one of the more generous scores, 7.5 out of 10, calling it an interesting title hampered by fundamental design flaws. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it a 2 out of 5, saying it fails both as a tower defense game and as a means to hold fans to the franchise over until Insomniac delivers a new mainline title. Eurogamer outright just said the game erodes the series' identity and has no heart, respectively. Now, I want to address that. The narrative, what little there is fair and fine, but I do think one problem this game posits is the fact that there's not as much notable care and love here. Like, okay, compare this to the build-up of All For One, which got a flipping comic, which, you know, again, may not seem like as big a deal, but tie-in material was showing that they at least were keeping in mind that.
It also had the thing that because of the way it was structured, it was basically supposed to have it was supposed to have each level with a big set piece or, you know, several mini set pieces to showcase, you know, the scope of what you were doing and still having that whole, you know, quality. Here we just jump into the action, and a lot of the levels outside of their design do not really have that kind of thing. Only the final boss encounter would be specific, tailored to actually be memorable, but otherwise it's the environment and the position of platforms that change here, but otherwise each level do not have like a big, you know, unique set piece kind of thing. All of the story progressions happens in between the levels, basically.
Can you destroy your own generators and lose the planet?
No. Why would I do that?
Why would you even do that?
No, is that possible in the game?
No, not really. Like, the closest you can get will have to be build zero defenses, just let the enemy go to town, but, like...
That's not fun.
Spoken like a
Why
true
would you want to
GTA
sabotage
player.
yourself? Jesus Christ, yeah.
What if we get bored?
Well, a game's not supposed to bore you, but that's a good segue, honestly. Yeah, unlike All For One, people don't really revisit this game as much, which is kind of a sad fate for it. Like, All For One did
has
get
the same
some
availability
reevaluations.
of All For One, and the servers are still up as far as I know, similar to All For One. But like I said, even if you're subscribed to the PlayStation Plus program, there are better things to try, and yes, you know, the advantage is that you don't have to pay that much extra money to play it, otherwise instead of actually purchasing a new copy or something like that. But like I said, there is better stuff to try out. So unless you're a hardcore fan of Ratchet and Clank, you're curious about what this is about, this is the go-to skip title. It will be still referenced into the Nexus, mind you, the next game after this. So we're not, Sonic is not pretending that this never happened.
You have unlocked the doppelganger.
Nice. I'm good.
Enemy dropship now on approach.
That's the sad thing. This game kind of suffered the worst fate that any game can get. It got panned, disliked, and then forgotten. Not even really revisited, just forgotten. Some people even tilt their head in confusion when you bring up this game, essentially.
Honestly, Joe, that being involved in the Sonic series, to be honest, when it comes to like bad games in the series, that people keep bringing up, I wish they were just forgotten.
Oh, don't get me wrong, that can be annoying, but I'm saying it's like the worst fate for almost any form of media is just to be forgettable. Like, I mean, you leave almost no impact whatsoever in the long run, which
I will still
really
say
shows
this,
you messed up.
What also you and I said, I argue, at least for me, it is applicable when you actually consider this in the context of its franchise alone. If I had to go around for the bigger picture, compared to a lot of the games that Sony was churning out around these years, I would still take these over them. Like,
that is a fair point.
I would have played Starhawk over this. We'll get there eventually. Don't worry about it. But no, okay. I know that it's objectively more beloved and more competently made, had more budget and everything. I'll take this over Uncharted 3. I'm sorry.
We will not be able to agree on that, sadly. But I do get your point, though. I do get your point, though, that, like, again, to give credit to the series, despite its ups and downs, the worst of the series is just, a bit of an overpriced mess, but never something that ever gets, like, outright bad, per se. So, like, again, to its credit, there are plenty of series that wish that their worst games were quote-unquote as worse as Ratchet and Clank's worst. Basically, their worst is equivalent to some other series' better or best.
Besides, like I said, this is yet another one of those cases where if this game had been released to clog up a bit the time between, say, the reimagining and Rift Apart, or in this case Rift Apart and hopefully the new game that supposedly is in the works thanks to data theft knowledge, probably would be a bit more appreciated. Like I said, thanks to the rise in popularity of co-op, more being open to different genre, the franchise starvation, and Sony being open up to release games on PCs, although inconsistently, unfortunately. A release like this probably would have been slightly more appreciated. If anything, that's kind of what was going to happen ideally, because the Spider-Man games were supposed to get a multiplayer-focused game based around on the multiverse saga from, the Miles Morales animated movies. It was just cancelled because of, the recent cases of the games as a service titles not working, made Sony scared shit about it. Allegedly. We'll still have to see if fair game still happens by the time we're recording this, but who knows? Same as Marathon.
And speaking of which, apparently the most well-received aspect of this game was indeed the competitive multiplayer. Again, I'm not familiar with it since I played this game, did not buy it. Well, obviously because I didn't have a PS3 or Vita, essentially, but from what I can recall, the most well-received section was the competitive multiplayer. So if you've played it, that's more up to you to recount, since I barely touched this game.
I think it's a similar. I haven't played it, but I guess it's a similar case to Brutal Legend. The executive management wanted to focus more on the multiplayer, but when it actually presented itself and people actually played it, they seem to have had a good time. I personally would have probably enjoyed more the co-op multiplayer experience of All for One than this, probably.
So yeah, in that case, I've seen this story before. Franchise typically well lauded for its single-player campaigns, forced to be more of a competitive multiplayer. It goes about as well over as it does in most cases.
Again, it has been a thing since the third game, and Deadlock was trying to enforce more a bit on that, so this is technically nothing new. the major difference, like I said, for this is the fact that this is an actual budgeted title. Again, yes, it's arguably more similar to Deadlock, except it has less content. That's the big thing. If this game still had a more robust, campaign, where the story lasted as much as, say, at least All for One, probably more people would enjoy it because they will be able to still, enjoy the single player experience without, having to be bothered by anything else. But because the game is so damn short in how it was presented to Rush for the 10th anniversary, there's only so much they can work with.
Is that all you got?
And would you say that the length represents the price that the game was initially sold
Oh,
at?
absolutely not. Like, again, if you care about multiplayer games, the price probably would have been justified enough. I think it was between 30 and 40 bucks, I think. Because, like I said, they did admit it was a budget title, so no full price at the very least.
Thank God.
But no, for this case instead, I argue no. Like, I'm actually glad that the copy that I got was for 10 bucks via Hex, obviously. And, this is still emulated anyway.
So, basically, we have kind of another Quest for Booty case on our hands. A title that's not worth its asking price, essentially.
No, really. Unless, like I said, unless you are actually part of the higher tier of subscription of the PS Plus program that allows you to get the PlayStation Now games, this is not really worth it. Also, wait a minute, that's a collector ship. What is it doing here?
Well, it seems we seem to have misplaced our collection out here. Somehow.
Well, like I said, that's a ship from the previous game that should have been part of the Ephemeris. So why is it instead, being recycled assets being used for the Marauders, which are complete different species?
Clearly, they took a look at the blueprints while we were sleeping, or some jazz like that.
Like, they did bother to introduce this new enemy force, which is super generic, but at the very least, compelling enough for what it's supposed to be, something that you need to fight, But they also did not bother to recycle too much. Alright, here's what happens. After you obtain all the objectives, if you noticed, you're able to unlock the final one, the unlock a barrier, that you get here, you restore the Planetary Defense Center, and then you need to perform the final activation. You need to return to your base. If you're playing single player, the other two characters stand on turrets for extra final defense, They're going to activate the big green button. And afterward, you just need to resist one final horde mode towards your base. Survive that, and you're good to go.
Riveting.
Like I said, for this first part, I'm basically showcasing how it's performed on a single planet, which, by the way, this is Markazia, by the way, which should be the native planet of Tolwyn, which would parse with the fact that she was supposed to be playable, but because she was cut away, relevance is lost, unfortunately.
It's like... And you know what? For as much critiques as I may have given All for One did feel like it had a lot of cool details, like, hey, if you had Ratchet and Clank, Clank could at least still equip himself as Ratchet's backpack. Here, not even that!
In that game it was for convenience sake for traversing specific terrains, otherwise you were supposed to actually, have it follow you all the time, which would have led to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Tails problems, as we noted.
The issue is, like, you don't even have Ratchet latched on... Sorry, you don't even have Clank latched onto Ratchet's back if, like, you're the sole player.
No, because they wanted Clank
game.
to be playable in this case, and in case you were playing single player, both Clank and Quark just stay out to guard the turrets.
Which really does lead me to believe that, yeah, they got rushed on this. Like, you know what I really feel like could have worked is if... Hear me out here, what if they had actually delayed All for One, since we know All for One also ran into some runs for time here and there. They could have built more on All for One, and that could have been the anniversary title instead of, again, literally rushing this out the year next.
Possible. I would have argued instead that if they ignored the anniversary component, besides Idle Minds was releasing the original trilogy, HD collection for the anniversary, so argued that should have sufficed. If they ignored this title and focused doubly the effort on the game they did after this into the Nexus to give it just a bit more content, it probably would have balanced itself better, because that's instead what the next game does. It tries to be an experience similar to a Cracking Time, return to that kind of basics, but it still is not that big, super big in content. Definitely more than this, but not as much as some of the previous ventures. So I argue merging the development of this with that would have worked things better, while leaving All for One as it was.
That is fair, honestly. I do agree. Okay, I do feel like respecting an anniversary with a certain title is something that every company needs to take into mind here. Now, mind you, if it's something big like a 50th or 100th anniversary, I absolutely get wanting to stick to that, essentially. Now, of course, at the end of the day, quality should take precedence over, making it in for an anniversary, but I do get how that can feel big and important. And a 10th anniversary is a landmark nonetheless, essentially. That being said, definitely not worth rushing if your game's gonna become weaker for it.
Alright, because like I said, we're rushing things out, now that we're activating the defense center of this planet, we are already about to get who the villain is behind the mask.
Oh no, it's Angela again?
I argue you're not too far away, actually, kinda. Because it's someone from the same game.
Never align themselves with you after all your treachery.
Now wait a minute. Quark may be a little rough around the edges, but at least he's not hiding behind a mask. Well, I guess he is hiding behind a mask, but he's not afraid of the universe knowing who he is.
Oh, LOL. I'm not afraid.
Laugh out loud.
So yeah.
I know this
Remember
guy.
the fanboy from the second game? The Quark fanboy? He's the bad guy now.
Oh god, it's incredible. Fanboy disillusioned with his hero becomes a
I'm
villain.
reminded of something else, but I will say it more in the next part. Yes, his name's Stuart Zirkle, and now instead of Ben Diskin, he's played by Richard Steven always.
Just like you. Then I watched as you were involved in scandal after scandal. And every time
The fact you weren't even aware of his previous scandal before that.
And I mean, he's not even that wrong. Quark just kept getting away with his shit.
That being said, I feel like this is a bit weird for him to do this after Quark has been disgraced and lost his position as president. Wouldn't it have made sense for him to do this while Quark was president?
But don't worry, guys. The planet is now secure. That makes everything better.
Well, that's what we'll find out in the next part, when we have to secure the two remaining undefended planets. See you for that.
See ya!